I've been married to her for 8 years. Not perfect, not a fairy tale, but solid, or at least that's what I kept telling myself. We met in our 20s, grew up together, learned each other's habits, our fights, our rhythms. We had routines, Sunday groceries, late-night shows, dumb inside jokes. From the outside, we probably looked fine. But a few months ago, something shifted. Not in a dramatic, movie scene way, more like a low hum you can't ignore once you notice it. She became sharp with me over nothing. Eye rolls. Sighs. That tone that says everything you do annoys me, even when you're just breathing. Her phone never left her hand anymore. Screen always angled away. Password changed. She started working late twice a week, then 3 times. I told myself I was being paranoid. People change. Stress happens. Marriage has seasons, right? Still, I felt it in my gut, that cold, tightening feeling that something important was slipping away while I stood there pretending not to see it. I didn't know yet how fast everything was about to explode. Once I noticed the shift, I couldn't unsee it. Every small detail felt louder than it should have been. She stopped asking about my day, but suddenly cared a lot about her appearance, new clothes, different perfume, makeup on days she used to skip it. When I'd ask casually, she'd snap back with, "What, I can't look nice now?" Like I'd accused her of a crime instead of asking a question. She guarded her phone like it was a life support machine. If I walked into the room, conversations ended mid-sentence. Notifications were silenced. One night, I reached for her phone to check the time because mine was dead, and she yanked it back like I'd tried to grab her wallet. Then she laughed it off, too loud, too forced, and told me I was being weird. Our arguments changed too. Before, we fought about real stuff. Now it was constant defensiveness. Everything was my fault. I was controlling, insecure, always suspicious. The irony burned, but I swallowed it because I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband seeing monsters where there were none. Still, every instinct I had was screaming that I was being lied to. I just didn't know yet how ugly the truth was going to be. The first real crack showed up on a random Tuesday night. She said she was going out with coworkers after work, nothing unusual, except she didn't name a single person. Just them. That alone felt off. I asked where they were going, and she shrugged, already irritated, like my curiosity was an inconvenience. Hours passed. No texts. No check-in. Around midnight, she finally messaged, saying her phone had died. When she came home, she smelled like a cologne I don't own. Not subtle. Not something you confuse with a bar or restaurant. I asked about it, trying to sound calm, almost joking. She snapped instantly. Said I was imagining things. Said I was accusing her. Said she couldn't believe I didn't trust her. The speed of her anger stunned me. No confusion. No reassurance. Just attack. Later that night, while she slept, I lay awake replaying everything. The lies weren't big yet, but they were stacking. And once lies start stacking, they don't stop. I think part of me already knew what was coming, I just wasn't ready to say it out loud. I didn't plan to snoop. I want that on record, mostly for myself. But a few days later, she left her tablet on the kitchen counter when she rushed out for errands. I didn't even touch it at first. I just stared at it like it might bite me. Then a message preview popped up. A name I didn't recognize. One line was enough, "I still feel your hands on me." My chest went tight, like the air had been sucked out of the room. My hands were shaking as I opened it. There was more. Way more. Inside jokes. Complaints about me. Plans that didn't include going home. Photos I can't unsee. Nothing vague. Nothing deniable. What hit hardest wasn't just that she was cheating, it was how casually she talked about it. Like I was already erased. Like our life together was just an inconvenience she had to work around. When she came home and saw my face, she knew instantly. The color drained from hers. No confusion. No what's wrong. Just panic. That was the moment everything changed, because there was no pretending anymore. The truth was sitting between us, ugly and undeniable. I asked her one question. Just one. How long? She didn't answer. She laughed, actually laughed, and said I was being dramatic. Then she tried to grab the tablet out of my hands like that would erase what I'd seen. When that didn't work, the story started changing every 30 seconds. First, it was just flirting. Then it was, we only kissed. Then it was, okay, it was a mistake, but it only happened once. I told her I'd read the messages. All of them. She went cold after that. No more fake confusion. She flipped it on me instead, said I drove her to it. Said I was emotionally unavailable. Said she'd been unhappy for years and I should have noticed. Every excuse came out sharper than the last, like she was daring me to fight back. I remember realizing, mid-argument, that I didn't recognize her anymore. The woman in front of me wasn't remorseful or scared, she was annoyed she'd been caught. That realization hurt almost as much as the betrayal itself. After the confrontation, she doubled down on the lies, not to convince me, but to protect herself. One minute she was crying, saying she felt lost. The next, she was ice cold, telling me I was overreacting and blowing everything out of proportion. It was whiplash. I couldn't keep up with which version of her I was supposed to respond to. She insisted it wasn't an affair, just an escape. Said he understood her in ways I never tried to. When I pointed out how cruel that sounded, she rolled her eyes and told me I was twisting her words. Somehow, in her version of events, I was the villain for invading her privacy, not the husband who'd been betrayed. That night, she slept peacefully while I sat on the couch until morning, staring at the wall. My mind kept looping every memory, every argument, every moment I thought we were okay. It felt like she was erasing our entire marriage in real time, and I was powerless to stop it. The shock wore off, and what replaced it was rage. Not explosive, movie-style rage, something colder, heavier. I'd be brushing my teeth or making coffee and suddenly feel it slam into me, like my body catching up to what my mind had been avoiding. My hands would shake. My jaw hurt from clenching it all day. She acted inconvenienced by my pain. If I was quiet, she accused me of sulking. If I asked questions, she snapped that she'd already explained everything. At one point she actually told me, if you're going to punish me forever, maybe this was a mistake to bring up. Like discovering her affair was my wrongdoing. I started replaying moments from the past year and seeing them clearly for the first time. Missed anniversaries. Last-minute cancellations. The way she'd flinch when I touched her but light up when her phone buzzed. Every memory felt poison now. That was when it hit me, this wasn't just about what she'd done. It was about how little she cared about what it did to me. And that realization burned deeper than the anger ever could. Our home stopped feeling like a safe place. Every room held tension, like the walls were listening. She moved through the house like I was an obstacle, not a partner. We barely spoke unless it was an argument, and even those felt pointless circles of blame that went nowhere. I barely slept. When I did, I'd wake up with my heart racing, images from those messages flashing through my head. I'd look over at her, asleep and calm, and feel this crushing mix of grief and disbelief. How could someone hurt you this deeply and then rest so easily beside you? Friends started asking if everything was okay. I lied. It felt humiliating to admit the truth, like her choices somehow reflected my worth. Meanwhile, she kept living her life, going out, laughing, acting lighter than I'd seen her in years. Watching her thrive while I unraveled was its own kind of cruelty. At some point, I realized I was chasing answers she was never going to give me honestly. Every time I asked a question, I got a version of the story that made her look better. Dates shifted. Details vanished. She'd swear she already told me something, then accuse me of not listening when I pointed out the contradiction. I caught her in another lie without even trying. She said she'd cut contact with him. Then her phone lit up while she was in the shower. Same name. Same casual tone. No guilt. No urgency. Just familiarity. When I confronted her again, she didn't even deny it, she just sighed and said she needed time and I was suffocating her. That was the moment something in me shut down. I stopped asking. Stopped pleading. Stopped hoping she'd suddenly become honest or remorseful. I understood then that the truth didn't matter to her the way it mattered to me. And once that clicked, I knew things were never going back to what they were. The sadness crept in quietly, after the anger burned itself out. It wasn't dramatic, it was heavy and constant, like carrying a weight I couldn't put down. I mourned things that weren't even gone yet, future plans, shared jokes, the version of her I thought I married. Some days I'd catch myself almost reaching for my phone to tell her something funny or interesting, then remember who she was now. That realization hit every time, sharp and fresh. Other days, I felt completely numb, like my emotions had just switched off to protect me from drowning. She noticed the distance and accused me of checking out. That hurt in a dull, ironic way. I was grieving the marriage while she was already halfway out the door, and somehow I was still being framed as the problem. Acceptance didn't come all at once, but the idea that this might actually end stopped terrifying me. It started to feel inevitable. After weeks of sleepless nights and endless internal arguments, I realized I had a choice: stay in a marriage built on lies, or step out before it destroyed more of me. I weighed everything: her lack of remorse, the casual way she treated our life, the daily erosion of trust. I thought about staying for the what-ifs, for the hope she might change. But every time I imagined trying to rebuild, I could see the cracks too clearly. The foundation wasn't just shaky, it was gone. The thought of years of therapy, arguments, and rebuilding trust with someone who didn't even see the problem felt unbearable. So I made the decision: I couldn't fix this marriage. Not for her, not for me. The hardest part wasn't anger, sadness, or betrayal, it was accepting that letting go was the only way to save myself. When I finally told her I was leaving, it wasn't a dramatic scene. No shouting, no slamming doors, just a quiet, cold clarity. I said I couldn't stay, that I deserved honesty and respect, and that she had already made her choice. Her reaction was what I expected: disbelief, denial, and then, eventually, the blame game. She accused me of overreacting, of being dramatic, of punishing her for a momentary mistake. Every excuse she had rehearsed came out, word for word. But I didn't argue. I just stood there, silent, letting her ramble. It was surreal, like the person I loved for 8 years had become a stranger. I realized that the person I married and the person I was standing in front of weren't the same anymore, and never would be. That clarity, as painful as it was, felt strangely liberating. After she moved out, the house felt both empty and suffocating. Everything reminded me of her: the mugs we never used, the couch where we argued, the bed that felt too big and too quiet. The first few weeks were the hardest. I ate poorly, slept poorly, and replayed every detail of the affair like a broken record. I started talking to friends more, letting myself admit the truth instead of hiding it behind polite lies. Therapy helped too, not just for processing her betrayal, but for understanding how I had allowed things to get this far without noticing sooner. Slowly, I began reclaiming small parts of my life, going on walks without feeling guilty, laughing at a stupid meme, making a coffee just the way I liked it. It was slow. Messy. Sometimes I'd still feel anger and grief flare up. But every little moment of normalcy felt like proof I could survive this, and eventually, I would thrive again. Looking back, the hardest lesson wasn't about her betrayal, it was about trusting my own instincts. I ignored the early signs because I didn't want to see them. I downplayed my gut feelings because I didn't want to be the jealous husband. That hesitation cost me months of clarity and peace. I also learned that people don't always change, no matter how much you hope. She lied, manipulated, and justified her actions, and none of it had anything to do with me, or, at least, not in the way I wanted it to. Accepting that was brutal, but freeing. Finally, I learned the value of self-respect. Choosing to walk away wasn't giving up, it was refusing to be erased. I realized that protecting myself, my mental health, and my future mattered more than clinging to a broken version of love. It hurt like hell, but it was necessary. Now, months later, the sharp edges of the betrayal have dulled. I still think about her sometimes, but it's more like scanning an old photograph, nostalgia mixed with relief that it's over. I've rebuilt routines, laughed without guilt, and started imagining a future where trust isn't a question mark. I've learned that healing isn't linear. Some days are easier, some days hit like a wave. But I finally understand that leaving wasn't failure, it was survival. I've become more honest with myself, more attuned to red flags, and more protective of my own peace. If there's one piece of advice I give to someone in the same storm, trust yourself. Don't ignore the small whispers of doubt, and don't settle for half-truths. Protect your heart, even if it means walking away from someone you once thought you couldn't live without. Because sometimes, survival is the bravest love story you'll ever write for yourself.